Welcome back to another edition to Mr. Ego's podcast. But just from your perspective tonight, the PPP, what do you think about that?
Well, I think the PPP could be, a good thing if it's utilized right.
Mm-hmm.
If it's going to be fair for all to get access to it, to all small business owners to get access to it. But that's not happening. You just read an article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution published on April the 27th that it says that experts says as many as 90% of minority businesses won't receive relief funds. Now, that's on top of that they didn't receive it the first round it came through. So we're talking about this round that's of stimulus funding that's been released, and there's still some disparities in who are able to get these funds. And so if we don't deal with these disparities, then it's going to leave a lot of black small business owners. It's going to leave them with no choice to close their businesses. And now we're not talking about the ones. Now we're not talking about on top of, or rather I say this. Now that's not talking about the other side of this, when black businesses that haven't filed their taxes in years and years. We're just talking about the initial thing that trying to just apply. And we're talking about the situation that, black business owners that have been paying their taxes and have been up on and keeping their books. But it just seems like these banks are prioritizing their loans, like in all loans, So we have to deal with these disparities. And if not, then, a lot of black owners, like small business owners, are going to be closing their doors because of these disparities are not being challenged or not being corrected.
Okay. So we're looking at under the CARES Act, they had $377 billion in new loans and grants for small businesses, right? And as we know, as of a few weeks ago, that was all gone. That was all gone. And then they went back to the table, and then they released some more funds. This time it's supposed to be directed towards the black and female business owners, or I should say black, but the minority business owners and female business owners. Now, as of today, I believe that's all gone. So where is the money going? Where's the money going? If it's not going towards small businesses, right? And female business, who got that money? And I know earlier you said that if there are back taxes and their paperwork and things like that is not up to par, then they're left out or excluded from getting it.
Yeah. When they don't, people have to understand that, banks have these real restrictive, regulations that they have to, when they apply for a loan, that they go through this rigorous scheme of regulations in terms of making the decision to award the loan. And so there are some documents that have to be there for you to even get your foot in the game, or even get your foot through the door. But after you get through the door, like I said, there's these disparities that kick in. And so you actually I think they awarded $2.2 trillion, the funding was for the first round was the 2.2 trillion for the
Mhm.
CARES Act. And so
Yeah.
that ran out in a matter of weeks. And now this money that's being released now. So you're looking at, as you look at reports, that a lot of big businesses, you know, well-to-do businesses that don't really need it are receiving money, so they have to send it back. You know, so they're so the you know the money is going some places that don't need to be going. You know, like I said, these banks are prioritizing what clients, you know, get it, because you got to look at who's the owners of these banks. You know, these owners are not going to let their friends go under. And then there's not enough of Black-owned banks that we can, you know, lean on. So we're just left to, you know, banks like Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo's and stuff, which there has been reports that they have been prioritizing these applications and who would get the loans to just maximize their origination fees and stuff, maximize their profitability. So and so you see these banks are not, you know, they're not likely to award minority small businesses or prioritize them because it's a profitability game, you know. So so these banks have been, people are looking into these practices and stuff. It's just an unfair game. You know, it's supposed, like you're saying, it's supposed to be meant for minorities and small businesses, and specific, you know, especially minority small businesses. But like you're saying, this latest report is showing that 90% of Black small businesses won't receive any funding.
So let me add to that. All right. So this is my take on the SBA program. All right. So for years and years and years, as long as I've been dealing with accounting and finance and business taxes and personal income taxes, the thing that's being promoted in our communities is that you get a small business, you claim a loss, you reduce that, you claim that loss so you can not pay taxes. Some people are not aware because they focus on getting the biggest refund, and that's what's being promoted in our communities. Is get your refund money, get this, don't pay any taxes in. Well, if more people understood that the whole point of being in business is to maximize your profits, then it would be different for our community as a whole in terms of how we do business. Because yeah, we go into the business to make money, but making money for some people means that whatever you get, you keep. You don't think about the obligations that you have to pay or the things that you have to do. I was talking to a potential new client yesterday evening, and he told me that he sells cars. He sells used cars. He has a C corporation, but he has not filed his business taxes or his personal taxes since 2007. So that's the part right there that hurts us, is that right when we get this business, that we're not operating within the legal ordinances that we have to be under to run a business within the city that we're in. Most of these small business owners, like especially independent contractors and stuff, don't have city business licenses. If you have a business license, you gotta operate under commercial code. So that means you got to get a city permit to do business. They know to establish an LLC with the Secretary of State, but most people don't realize that they got to continue to pay a franchise tax every year on May 1st. So then you look up these businesses, they have revoked status, but they're still operating in business. But if they were ever to go into a court of law thinking that the LLC is going to protect them with that corporate protection, it's not going to protect them because they didn't operate as a legitimate business.
Okay. What's an LLC? For those who don't know.
LLC is a limited liability company. There are 4 sets of business entities. There is a sole proprietorship, there are partnerships, there are corporations, and then there's LLCs. Mm-hmm. Partnerships and LLCs run under the same tax guidelines. So when you set up an LLC, you're under the partnership rules and administration according to the IRS. So if you're an LLC and you have 2 owners, then you will file a form 1065 to do your tax return. But if you're just a single owner, then you use the most common for sole proprietors is the Schedule C on the form 1040.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So for those who's running the business and not taking care of their business like they're supposed to. Okay.
Right.
So what about those workers? I mean, what about those owners that's in our community or that's in Hispanic community that are running the legitimate business, right? And they still not receiving the money that they're supposed to receive.
Well, that's a double-edged sword because when we create legitimate businesses in our communities, we need the community to support us.
All right.
And the only way that we'll truly get support is really when people outside of our community start supporting us, which is a sad thing because it's like if you have a nice restaurant and then you see a bunch of other people start coming to it, then you're like, oh, it must be nice. They coming all the way down here to go to this hole in the wall thing here. There must be some good food over here. So then people started coming. Outside of that, it's the capital. Okay. It's the capital. I mean, traditionally we have been kept from being able to get access to loans and access to business credit to help our business. When some other nationalities, and I don't mean to sound bigoted or anything like that, but other nationalities are able to go into a bank and receive unlimited startup funds to get a gas station or a beauty supply store and things like that, because they come in with the community mindset that their family is going to work for this other family until they earn enough to go out and get their own. And through the years of segregation and the civil rights movement, when everything started happening in the civil rights movement, we wanted to sit at the table with the other people instead of sitting at our own table. And so we tried so much to sit at other people's table that we forgot that we had our own. So, but at the end of the day, those people that are controlling the board still behind the table still keep us from getting the things that we need. We don't come in having the 20% down payment to put together a loan, or since we're first generation entrepreneurs, we don't have the collateral to put on our loan our loan to, our loan application to get it, because that's all we have. And then we already operating, close to a loss because we're barely scraping the surface. It's hard for us to really get ahead.
Okay. Going back to the financial piece where you talk about the banks, does it matter what bank these people bank with, small business owners bank with?
Initially, it did. Everybody could apply with whatever bank that they choose. But then when the bank started getting high volume from all sorts of customers, then they started, well, we're only going to help customers that have already had banking relationships with us.
We also have to look at some more factors as well. We have to look at the investment boards. That's not enough of minorities that sits on these investment boards of these banks, because the investment boards are the one that impacts the investment decisions. So there's not enough representation there for minorities. So that's one thing. Another thing that that Mike alluded to earlier is the loss, because we want to report losses. Small businesses, they want to report losses to lower their taxable income. But guess what? When you do that, here's the catch-22. When you go, banks award small business loans based on your profitability.
Yeah.
And so because of you taking these losses don't look very well when it comes to it doesn't fare well, or it doesn't work to your, it works more to your disadvantage in terms of obtaining a loan. It works towards an advantage towards tax purposes, but then you got to look at it, especially now, like since this COVID-19 hit, now you're forced to try to get a loan. So, but you just reported losses to lower your the lower your taxable income. So you want to pay in that much in taxes. And so the banks are still going by their regulations because they have licenses. And so they don't want to lose their licenses. Some things I believe got lax, but not all of it, So they're lending, so they have to, still adhere to their lending practices. And it's just a catch-22 when it comes to minorities. Back in 2000, like I said, back in 2016, a study that showed that that when it comes to female-owned businesses receive loan are 33. They receive 33% in approvals. 33% less approvals than male-owned businesses, and then minority-owned firms receive, the percentage increases. So female-owned businesses receive loan approvals 33 less often than male-owned, and so you can So when it comes to minorities, so when we talk about female-owned businesses, that's not grouping Black female-owned businesses, because the Black females are being grouped in the minority. And so now you're going to have some disparities between. So we're most so talking about white female-owned businesses. You see what I'm saying? So we got to look at these, how we phrasing and challenge how they are phrasing what's minority. So white females are grouped into minority. And so because the minority includes female-owned businesses and minority-owned business, where we know that the minority includes people of color, which is male and females. And so it's like white females are in a class by themselves, and they receive 33% less. These female-owned businesses receive loan approvals 33% less often than white male-owned businesses, and then the percentage increases when it comes to minority-owned business, which is going to include both your black male and your black female, business owners. And since we don't have these, and then, like I said, and then going back to the investment boards of these banks, that impacts the investment decisions, we don't have the representation on those boards like we should.
Okay. Hey, you brought it back up. Y'all mentioned that businesses, they report their losses in order for their taxes to get more back on taxes or get a tax break or something like that, right?
Yeah. It's the lower their taxable. It's the lower they report the losses to lower their taxable income.
Okay. That's why I call it tanking.
Because a lot of the small business owners are still working full time for someone else, and so they don't have a lot of taxes withheld from their paychecks, and they rely on their businesses to create a significant reduction of their income.
So
go ahead.
Because they're so small, it affects them more based on a major corporation, right? A conglomerate that may report losses, but because they're so big, they still get loans, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right, because they'll be able to generate capital and bounce back from certain things because they can raise capital on the open market by issuing more stock, or they can go to the banks and get loans if they have good loan payment history. But if, like big corporations fail, every now and then, like this last example of Sears. Sears and Kmart, well, Sears owned Kmart, and Sears for however long has been able to was trying to stand the test of time, but Amazon was kicking everybody out. So they've already had lenders, and when you can't pay your interest rates anymore, then you're pretty much gonna be shut down or go bankrupt. So that's what happens with corporations, is that they get the loans from the banks, and the banks will approve them because corporations don't have to walk in the bank with their CEO because they have shareholders that owns the corporations and everything else. And on top of that, if the corporation was liquidated, the bank is going to get paid first, whatever is owed to them in the form of money, and then the shareholders will get paid absolutely last. So the banks never personally guarantee loans for big corporations because the shareholders ultimately own the corporation. Now, with smaller corporations, with maybe less than 100 people owning one corporation, or let's say a single member corporation, and they might be big too, but there's one owner. Well, that owner, when he go into the bank and try to get a loan, he's going to have to personally guarantee that loan. Although that corporation may be making a significant amount of money, let's say $10 million a year, he's still gonna have to personally guarantee that loan. Now, he won't have to dip into his personal money because the corporation, the corporate charter protects his personal assets, but yet, because the way banks work, if there are numerous amount of people that owns the company, then you can't just go after one shareholder and not the other. So that's why there's no personal guarantees for large corporations as opposed to small corporations, because if something happens, then the banks may not get their money because that money may be transferred into that personal asset stash for that person that owns the corporation.